We are very well resourced in the fact that we do have UNC as what has been one of 3 inpatient psychiatric facilities for perinatal, and they have been around for a long time doing incredible research. So we in North Carolina are really lucky, and people come to the UNC program from many states. There had only been 3. There's now up to 5, and that is 2 more
in the nation.
In the nation, yes.
In the nation.
In the nation.
God.
Welcome to the Exit Strategy, your no bullshit guide to divorce with the experienced attorneys from New Direction Family Law. Unfiltered discussions to help you move from victim to victorious and from bitter to better.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Stevenson. I'm one of the partners at New Direction Family Law, and my partner in crime is here.
Hello, that's me, Sarah Hink. Always a pleasure. And today we have a couple of guests. We have an associate attorney from our firm, Tyler Kestner, joining us. Hello. And he'll be on the next few recordings with us and spotlight on one of them. But our main guest for this episode is Veronica Kemeny. Did I pronounce that right? Kemeny. I did not pronounce that right. This is why, like, my first internship as a DA's office, they made me go down the roll of everyone's calling them in court. And I was like, I don't want to do this ever again. And she is a licensed clinical social worker and one of the owners of Anchor Perinatal Wellness based here in Raleigh. And you have clients from Raleigh and then all over, correct?
All over the state of North Carolina.
Yeah. So that's great. So is this Perinatal Awareness Month or is that last month?
Yes, it's Maternal Mental Health Awareness Month. It's in May, yes.
In May, and we are here in May.
So this is perfect timing.
Perfect timing. So Veronica, tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Yeah, sure. So I am a parent to 2 children. I myself have gone through a divorce. I'm now remarried. I am a licensed clinical social worker and certified in perinatal mental health. So pretty much have been focusing on this exclusively for about 10 years plus. And Anchor Perinatal Wellness is a mental health facility founded by myself and 2 other clinicians. So we saw a need in the community for folks who needed more than once a week therapy, but less than psychiatric hospitalization. So we have been, our doors have been open for 4 years, and we have an office here in Raleigh. But we also provide teletherapy across the whole state of North Carolina. So as long as you're physically in the state, you can access our services, which is really nice. And we have had folks relocate temporarily for our services just because of how unique they are.
Yeah.
We have an intensive program, which is about 10 hours of group therapy. And everyone in the group is either pregnant or up to 2 years postpartum. And it is about 8 to 10 weeks, but it is an intensive program, but we're trying to make sure folks are stabilizing. We're, making sure they're not getting worse. They're learning coping skills, and they're in community, which is always very healing. And we integrate the family as well into our treatment. And we have on-site childcare, so childcare isn't a barrier. So huge. We try to really hit all the barriers and make sure that none of them are going to be getting in the way of them admitting and getting the care they need.
So how do people come to you? Like, what are the signs they first notice of themselves, and what are the steps they take to say, okay, I need to address this, that this is something real and happening?
Yeah. So first, I guess I'll define perinatal mental health.
Yes. What does that mean exactly?
Yes. And so perinatal is a more inclusive term than, let's say, maternal mental health. So perinatal is going to be inclusive of pregnancy and postpartum, and really, I would say, around the reproductive journey. So it could be trying to conceive, pregnancy, postpartum. I would include adoption, surrogacy, anything like that. And perinatal specifically is it's going to be non-gendered. So it could be the birthing person, so a person who has given birth to a child, but it could be the non-birthing partner, however they identify gender-wise. Yeah. So it is an inclusive term that we make sure that everyone knows to be as inclusive as possible. So ultimately, most often it's going to be in that period of that trying to conceive, pregnancy, and postpartum, and about I would say about 50% of mental health conditions do emerge during the pregnancy. And there are some folks who experience symptoms after. So it is something to keep an eye on. And I think oftentimes we think about, those first couple of weeks, and then it's going to subside. Actually, there's a lot of our folks and in our practices that we see that are 3, 6, 9 months postpartum. And only then are symptoms emerging, because by then we should have figured it out. We're back at work. No one's checking on us anymore. And so that's where we really start feeling the weight. So ultimately, there is a shift, and it's hard to know, is this, am I just anxious because I'm a new parent? And this is just what new parenthood is, right? Versus, for us, we really think about from the therapy perspective, is it getting in the way of your functioning, right? Are you really struggling to connect to your children in the way you want to? Are you struggling to enjoy them? Are you struggling at work? So some of our clients, especially for the intensive program, are most often, if they're back at work, they're taking a medical leave. Right. So we really think about that level of impairment. And so sometimes, honestly, the family notices first, where they're like, hey, you're not letting anyone else take care of that kiddo, right? We really want to give you a break, and that's really hard for you to accept, and we worry that you're going to get so burnt out. So families will often see the concerns, and I think usually the wording that we hear a lot is postpartum depression, which is why perinatal is wider, and I don't really talk about just depression because it can be anxiety, it can be OCD, it can be PTSD, bipolar, or psychosis. So,
that's what I was going to ask you. Is like if you are a family member or someone who cares about that person, what is it that should cause you a red flag or concern?
Yeah. So thinking about, normal ups and downs, I mean, I think it's important to say here in the early, about first month postpartum, there is something called the baby blues, which is really normal. That's not diagnostic. We're not concerned. We're going to keep an eye on it.
There's a lot of hormone changes.
Yes, a lot of hormone changes as your body goes through it. And even if you didn't deliver, but let's say it's an adoption or you're a non-birthing partner, it's like you are also going through the identity shift. You're exhausted, right? So it impacts the whole family system. So in those first couple of weeks, we really take a wait and see approach, unless things are really scary, right? Like they're talking about scary thoughts and they're unable to sleep. Right. Monitoring sleep is actually really important. Sleep and making sure they're getting nutritious food is really important. And sleep is often an indicator of when the baby is taken care of or the baby is sleeping. If they can't rest and it's very limited, sometimes that can be a trigger for a bipolar episode, or it could be a sign of a psychosis that's brewing. So keep an eye on their sleep. Really do your best to protect their sleep. It is. I know. It feels so counterintuitive, which is why it's also really tricky to diagnose, because they're like, well, of course I'm not sleeping. I'm a parent of a newborn. But the reality is I really try to think about it with that qualifier of when given the opportunity and people are either baby is sleeping or others are taking care of the monitor and the baby, can you rest your mind? And that's where I'd be more concerned if they're really struggling to turn off their mind. I do want to normalize scary, intrusive thoughts. It's actually quite common. So thinking about you're walking down the stairs and you're like envisioning dropping them.
I remember that.
Right? Exactly. It's something that people even nowadays rarely talk about. But our brain is like hyper focused on keeping this baby alive. And so we see every risk.
I had a leak, to bring it into the legal world. I had a case where my client had a thought like that. And she opened up to her husband, who should have cared for her, but instead he filed a domestic violence protective order against her.
Oh, great.
And took the children away and took the baby away. And she had a breakdown and ended up being hospitalized. But it all happened around this one thought that she opened up about dropping the baby.
And, and I may be wrong about this, but correct me. I think the judge wouldn't let her see these children or something, which would have been
eventually, but it was hard because she was hospitalized, so she couldn't come in and testify, and I was the only voice for her. So I had to have a quick education on postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and this whole world that I had actually just come back from maternity leave.
That.
So I was like, oh my gosh, and I really felt for my client, and how can I break this wall down to educate the other attorney, to educate her, husband, to be a little bit more caring, and then to the court. So that was the whole process. And that's why this topic became really important to me was, that case, my own journey into motherhood. And when you see it, then you start to look in all your cases and you see it, I know. Any case where I have a young child, infant involved, the other side, the non-birthing parent is often like, oh, they're crazy because they had a baby. Right. So you have to believe me that they're crazy. And everything they say right now is not true. But I digress. You were giving us some good information.
Incredibly important.
But that just invasive thoughts, they are normal.
And it is it's hard because as a mental health therapist, I want to be able to say, just ask for help, but it does matter who you talk to.
Well, I was going to ask you is that there has to be, and I think there still continues to be, my child is 23 years old, but there has to be some shame around this.
Oh, for sure.
Surely there's no other mother that feels like me, and there must be something terribly wrong with me.
Yeah, and that's why I think normalizing, the brain is meant to do this. And I think, there's a lot of ways to assess it. But I mean, my primary question is often going to be, how do you feel when you think that? If you're horrified, if you're feeling ashamed, if you're like, I just wish it would stop, I'm not at all concerned for the safety of the child, right?
Yeah.
If this is something that they are thinking like that is going to be relief, I'm going to save the baby from, I'm a terrible mother, right? And I'm going to spare them, a life with me, right? Then it's like, okay, that is psychosis, and that's a psychiatric emergency, and we're going straight to the emergency room.
Right,
so
right.
that's a really important thing of how do you feel when you think those, and I mean, a huge percentage is it makes them uncomfortable and they feel ashamed, to your point. Yeah. So there is still a stigma, and that's why, talking about this on platforms like this is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So meeting with someone who is trained is important, because the reality is you can tell a therapist who's not trained, and they can get scared by it, or a pediatrician who isn't that well informed, and now they're calling CPS. So it's hard, because I would love to say, just tell anyone. It's like, well, this is one of those that we can really, ourselves and other colleagues who are trained can really tease out when to be concerned and when to ring the bell of concern. And so, we know how to tease that out.
Yeah.
So we have, you go to Lamaze classes, you know how to have this baby. Yeah. Right before you have this baby, or is the medical profession or the counseling and therapeutic profession educating women?
I don't recall anyone talking to me about it in my doctor's office.
No, it's I gave birth 2.5 years ago, and I was curious because I had delivered in New England for my last child, so I wasn't local, and so I was like, let me see how this goes. And there was only so many questions they ask, and they give you usually postpartum, they'll be giving you the Edinburgh postnatal depression scale that people are like, oh yeah, I know what this is, I see it. But the reality is, on the medical provider side, even if they're doing a great job screening, they often struggle to know, okay, but then what? What number should I be concerned about? Who do I send them to? And that's why our partnership with OBs and pediatricians are some of our sort of most developed and nourished.
And it's self-reporting, right? So there that shame comes in. Are you going to open up?
And then I tell you, and then you report me. Why would I tell anybody else?
Yeah, I feel like the pediatrician asked me more questions about my mental health than like my own doctor.
Oh, interesting.
I have heard that. And those are kudos to those pediatricians.
Yes,
I actually heard that recently from someone that they said, because I have a history of mental health, my pediatrician is checking in on me every visit. And I was like, who is that pediatrician?
They are see them more often, too. Like, you don't go to your OB until 6 weeks later. Like, I'm just like, whatever. But you go to the baby
3 days later or something.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's interesting is there are folks, there's some risk factors, that, okay, I'm more likely to maybe struggle during pregnancy and postpartum. Like if there is a history of infertility and loss, if I have a history of mental health, even if it's been stabilized, it's like, okay, you're a little more at risk. Marital struggles, financial struggles, insurance barriers, things like that, and not having a support system. If there is a pre-existing diagnosis, making sure you have a really good treatment plan, especially around sleep. Sleep is so crucial in addition to. But I would say that there is not enough conversation unless you happen to already be with a therapist who is trained. And so you've been with them for a while and you're now, trying to conceive. You're in the right place. But oftentimes folks are with a therapist who's been fantastic, but they're not specialized. And so, there's definitely, I will say there are resources for sort of more of that like prep around the mental health. There's a wonderful organization called Postpartum Support International that has over 55 support groups, and they have a newer class in the last 3 years, because I actually took it with my husband as we were pregnant, sort of talking about how to keep an eye on and what are the signs for mental health for the couple. So there are ways on the prevention side, but the reality is a lot of people don't know they exist and don't know that this is actually something we should focus on, because usually it's like, not me. Right. I'll be at conferences and parents are like, thanks, and they walk on by. It's sort of like, not me. It's not going to happen to me.
Because what you hear about are these horrific cases, and it's like, clearly that's not me. I'm not going to go and kill my baby. I'm not doing that. So I couldn't be like that.
Right. And that's a very small percentage that are affected by this perinatal, the postpartum psychosis, right?
Yes.
And in those situations, that's when you're like, you want to go to the hospital.
Yes.
Resources are low in that. My understanding is that a lot of hospitals don't have training in that.
True.
Hey guys, it's Cam with New Direction Family Law. Let's face it, divorce affects a lot of people, myself included. My parents were divorced. I've been there. There's no easy way around it. It just sucks. But determining the finances of one household splitting into two can be one of the most stressful issues of divorce. Will alimony or child support have to be paid? Who gets the house and the cars? Who has to pay all the credit card debt or any other debt? Do I get to keep all of my retirement? These are all important questions that you need answered going into a divorce. And it's so important that you're represented by an experienced family law attorney that can answer these questions for you and help you develop a plan specifically for you and your situation to move forward. New Direction Family Law has over 80 years of experience protecting the rights of our clients when going through a divorce. We aggressively advocate, we support and educate our clients to achieve the best possible outcomes. So give us a call today to schedule an initial consultation at 919-719-3470. You can click the link in the episode description, or you can reach out to us on our website at newdirectionfamilylaw.com.
So really interesting for those of us who are in North Carolina, listeners and providers, you know, we are very well resourced in the fact that we do have UNC as what has been one of 3 inpatient psychiatric facilities for perinatal, and they have been around for a long time doing incredible research. So we in North Carolina are really lucky, and people come to the UNC program from many states. There had only been 3. There's now up to 5.
And that is
2 more.
In the nation?
In the nation, yes.
In the nation.
In the nation,
gosh,
which is why
really? Yeah.
UNC's unit and other units similar to them are receiving folks from all over the country.
Right.
Yeah, that's wild to me.
And exactly. And even folks like, you know, programs like ours that are more intensive, when we opened 4 years ago, we were the 15th state to have a program like this. There is now 25 states. In 4 years, it's jumped. So there is more awareness around this is a specialty. You need to be treated as such. And then we haven't even talked about the medication piece, right? Because people are so afraid to take medication. Right. They might wean themselves off. They might hear from a provider, well, that's not safe.
Yeah, the breastfeeding, if you're breastfeeding.
Right.
But a lot of times it is safe.
It is
But
safe.
you don't know until you have that conversation.
Yes. And if there are risks, it's something to also balance with untreated mental health also has an impact on you
absolutely.
as well as the baby in
Yeah.
utero. So weighing those conversations. But unfortunately, I hear a lot of folks who are like, I'm getting off my medicine, either recommended by a provider or on their own. And we're like, whoa.
When they have
hold on.
pre-existing mental health issues, they get off their medication, which kind of makes that the postpartum perinatal
more
it's
exacerbated.
just worse. Yeah.
Right, because you're adding that hormone and the sleeplessness and the conflict and disconnect with partner, right? Like it's like a salad.
It's a perfect storm. For
Exactly.
something to happen.
It is a perfect storm. And so that's why I think, you know, having these conversations and saying it's normal, it's a really hard period. And even if we sort of ignore diagnoses, like this is going to be a really hard time period for your mental health as a person and as a couple.
For how normal it is for there to be the amount of resources is just insane.
Right, but
is.
then you look on, sorry to get off topic, but then you look on social media and you see all these perfect families with all these children,
Yeah.
and they got their makeup on, they're all dressed, they're out there making their own bread. It's like,
I feel
I
like
can't
celebrities
I haven't been
are
out of my
starting to speak out more.
I haven't been out of my pajamas in like a week. I mean,
The shower. What's that? You know?
Yeah. And I think there is definitely, especially I've seen like on Instagram, and I hear on TikTok, I'm not on that one, but I hear is this, even over the last years, there are a lot of accounts that are like, this is the real parenthood, right? And they're talking about the scary things. They're talking about mental health. So there are those accounts, but I think, you know, once you, whether it be in your social circle or whatever, it's like you get a particular feed. But yeah, as a therapist, my feed is all therapy things, right?
Yeah.
So I see all that stuff. So there are places to really feel seen, whether it be in a support group that's virtual or in person, whether it be some social media accounts that you follow. But yeah, social media in and of itself, we do a lot of talk about just limiting social media, because it is when you're feeling so insecure, you open it up and you see all the beautiful birth announcements, you see all the, you know, the pictures that people have staged. So it is you often fall into the comparison trap with social media.
Social media is terrible, but it's there. It's there. So bringing this to the divorce world.
Going to say, coming back to divorce.
Yeah. So like in your experience, what do you see about how this affects marriages or just relationships in general? Obviously, it's a trying time with a baby, but then throw in some mental health concerns. I mean, what can happen to families? What have you seen?
And just to tack on that, as the non-birthing parent, what can I do to be supportive to, in my case, my wife or the birthing parent, to help them through that time as well?
the fact that you're asking that question is fantastic. So yeah, I want to reiterate how normal it is to have mental health ups and downs, both the birthing person and the non-birthing person. Whether you have a history or not, you do not have to have a history of mental health to struggle. So I think really normalizing, how do we come up with a plan to take care of ourselves individually and as a couple? So I often like to talk with folks and say, okay, what makes you feel like you, right? So if, you are a cyclist, an avid cyclist, how do we make sure you maybe can't go for a 2-hour ride every Saturday like you're used to, but let's make sure it's still a part. It's happening, because that makes my partner who they are. That's their stress relief. That's, their sense of identity. And so figuring out those sort of things for both partners on the forefront, thinking about support systems of like, who are our supports? Some people have local family that is, physically available, emotionally available. There's also doulas, which are fantastic, both for pregnancy, for birth and postpartum, and, support groups and things like that as well. So I would say, really normalizing, this is going to be a hard season in our marriage. Let's just go in and let's know that. Yeah. We are a team. Let's make sure that I'm keeping an eye on you, you're keeping an eye on me, and that we create some sort of a system of being able to say, I'm hitting a wall, step in. Right, and I'm now removing myself from this moment. I'm feeling very frustrated and overwhelmed and I'm tearful. Partner, eventually learning those cues. And depending on the length of your relationship, you may already know those, but you're going to see a different side, right? So part of it is really on the forefront. And that's where this conversation does not happen on the forefront, which is why so many people say, no one told me. No one told me. It's like a conspiracy.
You're so focused on the baby, right? Keeping the baby alive. We're going to have this baby. We have to take care of that thing. But it's funny, I saw this interview with Luke Combs, who's a musician, and I follow celebrity stuff all the time. But they just had their third baby, and the interviewer asked him, what do you do to help the baby? And he's like, no, I help my wife. I am 100% at her needs.
Right.
And, what does she need? Because she's the one breastfeeding. She's the one taking care of the baby, for the most part. What does she need me to do? That's the first person I report to. What does she?
But I think even the questions you're asking, if couples learn to do that, or parents learn to do that as a newborn, when they're 6 years old, you're still using those strategies.
Yeah.
I've hit this wall, and it's even worse, sometimes. I've hit this wall, you need to step in, but you've been doing that for all those years, so it's a great skill to learn.
It is. And really that team, there's couples who physical touch has been shown during an argument to sort of just chill out the nervous system and be like, okay, we're a team here.
A lot of people don't want to be touched after the baby.
Get away from me.
Yes. I just was having that conversation this morning in a therapy session where you eavesdropping. So I think part of it is, figuring out how to make a plan on the forefront, noticing, hearing your partner if they're concerned, protecting sleep on both ends. Again, I keep saying sleep, but it is really crucial. Being open to mental health support as needed. If folks have maybe been in therapy before, it might be a good sort of refresh to say, hey, it's toward the end of pregnancy. Let me reestablish my care. Yeah. And I can see you as needed. And maybe I don't need you, but at least I've seen you once or twice. I've talked about my, normal anxieties. So really bringing in your village. If you are already on medications, making sure that you are talking to someone who's trained in perinatal psychiatry so you can feel at ease. So, lots of things, and really thinking about having those conversations like visitors, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I want my mother to move in for 3 months. She lives out of the country, and the other partner is like, no, thank you, right?
Absolutely not.
So visitors is a big one. So and obviously these are sort of the immediate aftermath, but these are the sort of things that people don't think about, similar to planning for the wedding, but not the marriage, right? It's like the birth is the event, but it's like, okay, let's talk about the actual transition to becoming
parents. It rocks your world, and it will rock a relationship.
So what happened? So I would assume that not every couple is on the same page, and someone may want your services, and the other partner may not want your services.
Yeah, great question.
Is that okay?
Yeah, well, we only serve folks who are over 18 who can consent for their own treatment. Right. So in that sense, we don't need permission. So we do integrate family support. And if for whatever reason our client doesn't want their partner involved, or the partner themselves isn't making themselves available, we just say, who could we bring in another support person? Your mother, your sister, your best friend. So we integrate whoever it may be. So because, for the future success of their stability, we want someone in there who is able to ask these questions. Say, how can I help them when they're in the middle of a panic attack and my sister's calling me, right? So we want to be able to provide psychoeducation and support. ideally whoever they live with, a partner would be ideal, but it is in no way mandatory for treatment. Okay. Yeah, it's just the ideal. I would say generally just really thinking about, I'm dreading waking up. I'm especially a lot of anxiety right before the nighttime. It's like, what sort of night am I going to have? When it's really getting in the way of your ability to enjoy it all, there's a lot of tearfulness. You can't slow down your mind, right? Things like that. I'd be more concerned. Breastfeeding is really hard. So if they plan on trying that and there's struggles, that's, a real concern that can impact their sense of self as a mother of I can't do this most natural thing.
Right. You get so obsessed with it too.
Yeah.
Yes, you start measuring. Yeah. So I think the most, grace, compassion, the check-ins with your partner, which is, hard when the day is really busy and focused on this little being, but slowing down and sort of if baby is resting, eye to eye, however you've had those conversations in the past, hopefully have some good tools in your toolkit as a couple, really leaning into how are we each doing? What do we each need? What's one thing I did really well this week that you want me to do again? Or how could I have helped you a little bit better this week? Like seek feedback from your partner and do more of that.
Yeah. And remember that this is a phase.
Yes.
In one of my cases, I had a judge and the other attorney didn't understand that this is not a long-term situation when there's postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis. Like it's treatable.
Right.
Yes.
You get treatment and you get better and you can be an amazing mother or father. Like this is not going to forecast the future. Right. So, I was looking for doctors to come testify and educate the judge. Is that something you've done in the past or what?
I am not trained in that, but our clinical director, Roxanne Rosenberg, has undergone that, and she's local. And through Postpartum Support International, which is that wonderful organization I referenced earlier, they have a whole legal team, folks who are trained as psychotherapists to attend, and they will. And, usually, they're very cost prohibitive, right? So that's the hard part. Right. But yes, there are experts, and so that add that to your team. And we have had clients who have had to do that during custody things when their perinatal mental health has sort of come up on the stand.
Yeah, because it's so biased. People just hear it and they shudder. Like they think of those extreme cases about mothers killing their children. It's like that's not what's happening here.
Right.
And this person's been treated and they're on medication and they're a good parent. Like that's not.
And even if they have been hospitalized, they underwent treatment, which is really a thing in their favor that they're getting the care.
Absolutely true.
Right. So even if there is a history of hospitalization and it probably did not reach, that level that we're talking about of the scary headlines that are, so scary and overwhelming, even as long as they're getting treatment and they are following the recommendations, there really shouldn't be a fear. But of course, it's understandable. And that's where I think lawyers reminding your clients, taking care of yourself, getting treatment, that is going to be actually really good for your case versus holding back and suffering and silence, right?
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree. But I have not a lot of cases, but a fair amount of cases where either they're pregnant, they separate, or right after, and that sort of thing. And so you don't have this other person, and
you're going through a separation on top of it.
On top of that, and judges don't know what to do. You're breastfeeding, so you can't have this child overnight. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, yes, you can. Just pack up your breast milk and take it." There's a lot of education that needs to be done.
There is.
I'm just telling you, it's scary out there sometimes.
And that's, I think, it adds to the maintaining of the shame, right? It is. It's like people that are hearing your struggles are not going to always empathize or are going to really be able to make some accommodations, so it is, I think the moral of the story really is to, lean on the supports that you feel safe with, be open to help. We're not even saying you have to commit to help, but be open. Talk to a therapist. You just entertain the option, right? And know that, especially if you're with someone who is trained in perinatal mental health, that there is a certification that you can get as a therapist, which is really nice for a client to know if they have those letters, PMHC, like I do, as well as pretty much all our staff does, perinatal mental health certified. They get it. They're highly trained. I can be honest, and they can tease out what is really concerning and what isn't, so that it can sort of diminish the risk of someone getting really fearful about what you're sharing, because unfortunately it does happen.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, because I have I'm not a licensed social worker, but a master's in social work.
Nice.
And I headed up a program in North Carolina. I started it here, helped it. it's called Healthy Babies. I can't remember.
Yeah,
But they were in the
yeah.
hospital, and then they would go. They were volunteers. They were trained, and then they would go visit you 3 days after you
Yes.
gave birth. And so I said, if you wanted something, we can help you. It costs you nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, give you resources. And I know it started in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's still here or not. But it's what a fabulous.
Yeah, so
program.
nurse visiting programs is
Yeah.
basically the umbrella sort of term for those sort of programs, and they are fabulous, and they are most often free. And it is a nurse who is trained to come into the home, you know. And I mean, this is the standard in other countries,
know.
like Europe.
I was about to say, no one mentioned that to me.
Yeah, let's not even compare because it will just be too sad. But it works. It really diminishes, you know, the risk of the mental health on the parent. We're catching up and making sure baby is meeting their milestones. So if there's any concerns, so those programs work and they're free. They don't even check your income. So even if you're potentially way over the income limit for a lot of free programs, you are
can get
eligible.
this.
It's not even like only Medicaid recipients. There is no income, you know, checked. Do you need this support? Do you want this support? Are you welcoming it?
Right.
So yes, those sort of programs are fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
You're a great resource for us to educate,
Absolutely.
you know, judges, other attorneys, and connect our clients with you. But if someone's listening out there today in North Carolina that wants your services or wants to know more, what should they do? How do they reach out to you?
How do they reach you?
So our website has a lot of information, anchorperinatal.com. I would say the thing that is most accessible to everyone across the state is we do have free maternal mental health walk-in clinic. So whether it be
nice.
physically walking in during our walk-in hours, whether it be scheduling that appointment in person or scheduling a virtual appointment, we're happy to just get a sense of what's going on with you, what are the supports, what are your symptoms, and we can provide a recommendation and resources. You never have to see us again, but we've given you a bunch of resources that you now have the tools to step forward and to accept some help. And so I would say that is probably going to one of our screenings, speaking with your doctor if you're concerned. Many relationships, we have lots of relationships with OBs and pediatricians. So going to them, they probably have some trusted referrals. And yeah, I would say our walk-in clinic, you can submit through, you know, our website. And yeah, just reach out. We're here to listen, and we've had folks reach out from other states, and we will make sure you get connected in your state as well.
Yeah.
So we just
You're
try
not
to make
alone.
sure, not at all. There are resources.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. It's a subject we don't talk about enough,
Yeah.
for sure.
I'm glad to talk about it this month.
Yeah, you did.
Perfect. Thank you, Veronica.
Yeah,
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
And bringing life into this world is hard.
It is hard. Keeping
that-
them alive is hard.
Ain't that
That's
some
all
shit?
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review. You can visit us online at newdirectionfamilylaw.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at the Exit Strategy _podcast or email us at exitstrategy@newdirectionfamilylaw.com. We'll be back next week with more no bullshit content about life, divorce, parenting, relationships, and everything in between.